Okay, think about this for a second. You've got this enormous global financial highway, right? Millions of transactions zipping across it every day. We're talking about remittances, the money workers send home to their families, basic stuff, food, rent, school fees. It's probably the most, well, necessary and, frankly, mundane financial activity out there, legit. But here's the paradox we're diving into today, and it's a bit unsettling. What if these totally routine, everyday money channels are allegedly being, well, hijacked, repurposed to fund complex cross-border security threats? Yeah, so we're looking at a stack of sources today, digging into some pretty serious investigations coming out of India. It's all about alleged terror funding. And the whole story seems to revolve around Bengali expatriates working in Southeast Asia, places like Malaysia, Indonesia. The allegation is they're being used not just for their labor, but maybe as conduits, sometimes unwitting, sometimes radicalized, for illicit money flows.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because what these investigations suggest is a really significant shift in strategy. It's something we need to get our heads around. So our mission here in this deep dive is basically to piece together the findings from the Bengal Police's Special Task Force, the STF. They've uncovered what looks like a substantial evolution in how extremist activities in India are being financed, and also how radicalization is happening from abroad. And crucially, we need to look at how these operational changes seem to have created, maybe inadvertently, a major blind spot for security agencies, not just in India, but globally.
And maybe just to quickly frame this for everyone listening, we should probably remember the sort of historical tensions along India's eastern border. When you hear about groups allegedly based in Pakistan and Bangladesh working together and using this particular demographic, these expats, as a financial channel, well, that immediately sparks fears, right? Fears about instability, maybe operational growth for these groups in Bengal and nearby states.
Exactly. And the core allegation, laid out pretty clearly in the sources, is that these Bengali expatriates, often, low-wage workers abroad, are being used by terror organizations based outside India, used to funnel funds back to extremist modules operating inside India. It's a method that seems to cleverly leverage global migration patterns, using them for, well, financial camouflage.
And how did the authorities even get wind of this? The trigger seems surprisingly subtle. The Bengal Police STF, they kicked off their investigation after getting intel about, and this is their phrase, unusual remittance patterns.
Yeah, not huge sums.
No, not massive. One-off transfers that would scream problem. It was more like strange clusters of activity popping up across different districts in West Bengal. And eventually following that trail led them to detain 3 men who they suspect are linked to a terror module.
And what's really striking here is the specific demographic they seem to be targeting for this strategy. It appears the focus is almost entirely on expatriates from Bengal who are doing menial jobs overseas. Malaysia, Indonesia, places like that.
Right. So this isn't about tapping into like big shot financiers with offshore accounts.
No, not at all. It's exploiting the very essential, very normal financial flows of people who genuinely need to send money home just to get by.
Which brings us right to the core of it, doesn't it? This big strategic shift in how the funding actually works. Historically, authorities spent, decades chasing Hawala channels.
Right, and that's the key contrast we need to look at. For years, Hawala was king. It was incredibly effective, offering, almost total speed and anonymity, a huge advantage for illicit groups, obviously.
But risky if discovered.
Exactly. The risk of interception, if authorities got a lead, could expose the entire network. It was high stakes. So our sources suggest that as surveillance on Hawala really ramped up globally, the strategy had to evolve.
Okay.
And this new method, it's actually, well, it's deceptively clever. They started using conventional monitored banking systems, the very systems designed to catch illicit activity. But, and this is the key, they use them in such a way that the illicit money just vanishes into the noise, into the flood of legitimate worker remittances.
Hang on, so they traded the secrecy of Hawala for basically hiding in plain sight within the official banking system? Doesn't using monitored banks make them more vulnerable?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But that's the counterintuitive genius, as you put it, why we're calling it a sophisticated exploit. They definitely lose that absolute anonymity of Hawala, no question. But what they gain is almost complete systemic protection from automated detection systems, the algorithms.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, that technical precision you mentioned. The crucial detail seems to be the size and the frequency of these transfers.
Yes.
They're not sending big chunks of cash that would automatically set off alarms. No, the amounts being allegedly remitted are small, like INR 5,000 to 10,000. What's that in US dollars? Maybe 60 to 120 bucks roughly.
Exactly that range. And it's absolutely deliberate, those tiny sums. Because while the specific thresholds differ bank to bank, region to region, most sophisticated security systems in banks are set up to flag irregularities,
All
right?
right. Big transfers, unusual patterns compared to past behavior, money going to known risky places.
Precisely. So these small, frequent sums are designed specifically to mimic standard remittances, like someone sending part of their salary home. They fly right under those regulatory tripwires. The mandatory suspicious activity reports, these amounts usually don't trigger them.
So it basically creates the ultimate needle in a haystack problem for law enforcement.
Hmm.
You've got tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of genuine expats sending similar small amounts home every week or month for legitimate reasons, rent, food, school fees, and the illicit transfers just blend right in. They use the sheer volume of global labor finance as cover.
Yeah, imagine trying to find one specific grain of red sand mixed into an entire beach of white sand.
That's a good analogy.
The grains look identical, same size, same shape. The only difference is the intent, the ultimate purpose. So this tactic forces security agencies away from just looking for large, suspicious transfers. Now they have to track volume, patterns, networks. And that makes detection exponentially harder.
Let's shift gears a bit to the human side of this. This network seems to rely on a kind of decentralized, three-step approach. It's not just about moving money, it's also about building the network itself, the personnel. So step one is recruitment.
Yes, and the sources suggest this is where the vulnerability of these expats really comes into play. Bengali workers, often isolated, maybe struggling financially in a foreign country, they're allegedly approached by handlers based there in Southeast Asia, radicalized.
Preying on loneliness, economic hardship.
Seems like it. That sense of isolation many migrant workers feel, being so far from home, it makes them susceptible.
Okay, so that's the recruitment. Then step two is what we just talked about, the transfer of funds. Those small, regular amounts sent from the expat's own account. Looks totally legit, like salary going home.
Yeah.
But it's step three that really builds the threat on the ground, module formation.
Exactly. So operatives back in India, they receive this steady trickle of microfunding, and they use it to build sleeper cells to recruit vulnerable young people locally across West Bengal and maybe neighboring states too.
Ah, so this is where the ideology really kicks in. It moves beyond just fundraising.
Yes. The network apparently uses local religious gatherings, radical online messaging, that sort of thing, for recruitment inside India, trying to groom local leadership.
And there's a definite outside influence pushing this ideology, isn't there? The sources mention the module's leadership might have received specific training from foreign terror groups. Pakistan, Bangladesh-based.
That's what's indicated, yes. Training from established groups abroad. But maybe even more worrying, the sources specifically point to the role of external preachers. Yes, Salafi clerics from outside India who reportedly traveled or delivered sermons, maybe online, maybe in person at some point. Radical sermons.
Wow.
It suggests the radicalization isn't just happening organically, it's being actively supported, fueled by cross-border ideological influence, importing specific extremist narratives directly into local communities in India, making sure the new recruits are aligned with the foreign backers.
So that structural shift, using normal banks, tiny transactions, it leads us straight into this massive, almost paralyzing challenge for law enforcement, doesn't it? If the money's flowing through legitimate banks and the amounts are negligible individually, what can authorities realistically do?
Well, the operational dilemma is it's acute, it's huge, trying to track countless tiny transactions flowing through regular banking channels, and then trying to separate the criminal funding from the millions of genuine transfers.
All while making sure legitimate families get their money quickly.
Exactly. It's an enormous resource-heavy task.
This raises an important question then. What kind of solutions, regulatory or maybe tech-based, could possibly tackle this level of financial camouflage without just shutting down global remittances?
Well, experts are talking about needing entirely new monitoring systems, but implementing them is incredibly complex. One idea that's been floated is maybe designating specific types of bank accounts just for expatriate remittances.
Like a separate channel.
Sort of. Creating a distinct audit trail that might be easier to scan, maybe with AI, looking for subtle patterns linked to known handlers or emerging module leaders. But, putting systems like that in place, it requires huge investment. Sophisticated AI that can spot nonlinear, complex patterns, not just big sums. And crucially, it takes time. Years, probably.
Like cooperation, I imagine.
Massive international cooperation, especially with the host countries in Southeast Asia. And they might not see regulating the outflow of funds from their low-wage foreign workers as, well, a top priority.
So you've got this direct collision, right? The security imperative to track dangerous money versus the economic reality of global labor. These workers need their families to get that money fast and cheap.
Absolutely.
So authorities are walking this ethical and logistical tightrope. You can't just slow everything down or unfairly profile millions of legitimate transfers hoping to catch a few bad actors.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture for a moment, this case really highlights a much wider, more systemic security challenge now. It's shifted. It's not just about intercepting one big wire transfer anymore. It's about trying to counter this growing, decentralized network of radicalization, a network that deliberately crosses borders and uses the very legitimacy of global finance as a weapon.
Which loops back to the geopolitics you mentioned earlier. The alleged merging of interest between groups in Pakistan and Bangladesh, reportedly aided by these overseas Bengali expats providing the financial screen. That really amps up concerns about stability along India's eastern flank. It's already a sensitive area for cross-border issues.
Which is why the official response has to be international. It just has to be. Sources indicate the ongoing investigation is expected to trigger, high-level diplomatic talks, security dialogues with governments in the region, especially Southeast Asia.
Tackling both ends.
Exactly. Addressing it at the source, where the recruitment and the money transfers start, and at the destination, India, where the modules are forming. That requires shared intelligence, maybe unified regulations down the line.
So what does this all mean? If you had to boil it down for the security landscape right now, for me, the most stunning takeaway is how this shift away from illegal channels like Hawala and towards these tiny conventional bank transfers is actually a really sophisticated move. An exploit.
It is.
The very methods we built to track big financial crimes, they seem almost useless against this kind of financial miniaturization.
And that leaves us with a critical challenge going forward. For authorities everywhere, really, it's no longer just about identifying where the money is physically going. The harder question now is, how do you effectively separate that targeted illicit financing from the overwhelming legitimate noise of global migration and finance? And how do you do that without creating systems that unfairly burden or delay the millions of genuine, often poor, workers just trying to send money home? That balance, security versus the human cost, that's the really profound policy puzzle here. And it's one regulators will be wrestling with for years to come.